it's True Crime Queen, and today we're going to be switching up the format a little bit. I'll be discussing today's true crime case as I do my press-on nails. If beauty and true crime content interests you, stick around, like, comment, share, and subscribe. 22-year-old Dominique Dunne had it all. She was the daughter of ranching heiress Ellen Griffin and writer-producer Dominique Dunne. By the early 1980s, she had a slew of movies and television shows under her belt, including her most famous role as Dana Freeling in The Poltergeist. She seemed to have the world at her feet. But at the height of her career, her life would end, shrouded in tragedy. On the eve of Halloween in 1982, her life would be snatched away at the hands of her former boyfriend, in the driveway of the Los Angeles home they once shared, as he literally took the life out of her, leaving her in a coma for nearly a week before her untimely passing. But where did it all go wrong? How could Dominique Dunne go from having it all with a thriving career full of box office hits and guest starring on popular television shows to passing away in the driveway after being stormed by her boyfriend at only 22? What really happened may surprise you. This is her story. Thanks for tuning in. I'm the True Crime Queen. I post videos about celebrities, controversial cases, and other spooky content. If that interests you, stay tuned, like, comment, and subscribe. Dominique Ellen Dunne was born in Santa Monica, California on November 23, 1959. Dominique was born into a privileged family that includes her father, famed writer-producer Dominique Dunne, novelist John Gregory Dunne, and her brother, actor-director Griffin Dunne. For a year after she graduated from high school, Dominique spent a year in Florence, Italy, where she learned to speak Italian. However, life inside the Dunne home wasn't always as picture-perfect as it may have seemed. Her parents divorced in 1965. Her mother was later diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and confined to a wheelchair. By 1979, she made her way back to Los Angeles to land her first role as a teenager in the TV movie Diary of a Teenage Hitchhiker. Between 1979 and 1981, she landed multiple appearances on TV shows like Lou Grant and Breaking Away. In 1982, she guest starred on an episode of the musical television drama Fame.
What will happen to you now?
They see if there's room at Father Ritter's. It's like a halfway house for street kids. Then if he's booked up, which I heard he is, they look around for a foster home.
Why not your own home?
Because I've run away every time that they send me back there, and I'll do it again, and they know it. Nice meeting you. Have a nice life.
The same year, Dominique landed her most well-known role in Steven Spielberg's supernatural horror film, The Poltergeist. The film centers around a family whose home is haunted by a host of demonic ghosts. She played the role of the oldest daughter, Dana Freeling. The film was a box office hit. Critics praised Dominique for her role, and her career seemed to be on the fast track. Unfortunately, the world would never get to see her become the household name she was destined to be. In 1981, Dominique met 25-year-old John Thomas Sweeney, a chef at the high-end restaurant Ma Maison in Los Angeles. Sweeney came from humble beginnings in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. His father, John Sweeney Sr., liked to drink and also put his hands on his wife. When Sweeney Jr. tried to intervene, he too felt his wrath, according to the LA Times. He says he wanted to become a chef because he wanted to, quote, get out of that little town, and I needed a ticket. His culinary skills eventually captured the attention of Patrick Terrell, Ma Maison's then owner. The head chef at the time was future restaurateur Wolfgang Puck. Sweeney was sent to the south of France for a year to enhance his cooking skills. When he returned to Ma Maison in 1981, Wolfgang had left, and Sweeney became the head chef. The same year, he met Dominique. Shortly after meeting at a party, the two decided to get a home together in a cozy house in West Hollywood. At first, everything was peachy keen, and the two seemed like the perfect couple. Her mother Ellen said she was fiercely protective of him, and I think she loved him very much in the beginning. However, their sweet romance ended as Sweeney's uncontrollable temper came to the surface. Having grown up with humble beginnings, Sweeney felt intimidated by Dominique's wealth and Hollywood connections. Her mother Ellen told the LA Times that she would never forget when she first learned about the dark nature of Dominique's relationship with Sweeney, saying, quote, "She came over here one night and she was weeping. She said, "Oh, Sweeney has such a terrible temper. He smashes furniture and throws dishes." I said, "Dominique, that's frightening." I've never forgotten her answer. She said, "Oh, he'd never hurt me." The growing tension eventually grew worse behind closed doors at the couple's home. In August 1982, Sweeney, who had been drinking, began arguing with Dominique and tore fistfuls of hair from her scalp. Dominique escaped to her mother's house, crying hysterically, where she stayed for 2 days. But Sweeney, offering flowers and apologies, convinced Dominique to return home a short while later. According to the LA Times, the couple visited therapists, but the dark times did not end. 5 weeks before her passing, Sweeney put his hands on Dominique again. Dominique's friend, Brian Cook, who was staying with the couple, recalled a time when he overheard them arguing. Brian said they were fighting. He was jealous about something. He says he then heard a loud clunk, and then this gasping, the most horrendous sound I ever heard in my life. Dominique ran to me and she had marks all over her neck. Sweeney was very scary at this point. He was denying completely that he had even touched her. We were all a little fearful. Dominique showed up to the home of family friend Norman Carby, who took pictures of her injuries. The marks were so vivid that they could be seen when Dominique appeared on an episode of Hill Street Blues called Requiem for a Hairbag. She eventually broke up with Sweeney, who would also stalk Dominique, waiting outside of her acting classes, according to those who knew her at the time. This caused Dominique to occasionally stay with friends in an effort to avoid him. Although Sweeney had moved out, Dominique was afraid to go home. On October 12, 1982, she contacted a locksmith. The locksmith, Gus Uribe, later said in an interview that while he was changing the locks, Dominique told him Sweeney drove by, lurking outside. That same month, she began work on the science fiction miniseries V and shot scenes for the first 2 of 3 eventual episodes. On October 30th, 1982, Dominique's life would take a devastating turn for the worse. That evening, Sweeney walked from Ma Maison to the West Hollywood home he and Dominique once shared. While she was rehearsing scenes with her co-star David Packer, Sweeney arrived at her home to beg forgiveness. She agreed to speak with him on the front porch. Inside the house, David heard Sweeney yelling, Dominique crying, and some thuds. Fearing the worst, he called a friend and said if he lost his life, the person responsible was Sweeney, before calling police. Back outside, after refusing to get back together with Sweeney, he became enraged and grabbed Dominique, wrapping his hands around her throat and squeezing the life out of her. David eventually ran outside and found Sweeney kneeling over Dominique. Medical examiners later estimated Sweeney wrapped his hands around her throat for 4 to 6 minutes. When police arrived, they found Dominique blacked out in the driveway, with Sweeney standing near her. She was taken to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, and Sweeney was taken into custody. "We went to see her every day," Ellen Dunne said. "She looked so beautiful. She had this bandage on her head, but her face looked wonderful. We sat there and held her hand." Dominique fought for her life in a coma for 5 days before she was removed from life support on November 4th, 1982. Dominique was just 22 years old. Her family asked that her organs be donated. Hundreds of family, friends, and loved ones showed up to her funeral at Good Shepherd Catholic Church. She was laid to rest 2 days later at Westwood Village Memorial Park. Her Poltergeist co-star, Heather O'Rourke, would later be laid to rest in the same cemetery in 1988 at only 12 years old. Following her passing, Sweeney was charged with first-degree murder. Public defender Michael Adelson was assigned to represent Sweeney. When the case came to trial in August 1983, there was more damaging evidence against him. Investigators tracked down one of Sweeney's previous girlfriends, Lillian Pierce, who would eventually testify that Sweeney had put his hands on her on 10 separate occasions. Lillian also said that she had been hospitalized twice. She said Sweeney had broken her nose, punctured her eardrum, collapsed her lung, and thrown rocks at her when she tried to escape from him. She also said she had seen him foam at the mouth when he lost control and smash furniture and pictures. During her testimony, Sweeney jumped up from his seat at the counsel table and headed for the rear door of the courtroom. Someone shouted, "Get help!" and silent alarms were activated. The bailiff leapt to his feet and lunged for Sweeney, grabbing him around the chest from behind. Within seconds, armed guards rushed into the courtroom. The bailiff and Sweeney crashed into a file cabinet. Sweeney was subdued and then handcuffed to the arms of his chair, where Adelson whispered frantically for him to get a hold of himself. Through tears, Sweeney apologized to the court and said he wasn't trying to escape. Superior Court Judge Burton Katz accepted his apology, saying, quote, "We know what a strain you are under, Mr. Sweeney. Sweeney's explosion of anger was not witnessed by the jury. At Adelson's request, Lillian's testimony was given outside of the presence of the jury in order to determine its admissibility as evidence. Adelson also requested that the Dunne family show no emotion. Judge Katz told the family, if any member of the Dunne family cries out, rolls his eyes, exclaims in any way, he will be asked to leave the courtroom. Judge Katz also ruled that the prosecution could not use the testimony of Lillian Pierce to show the jury that Sweeney had committed previous acts of violence against women, saying it was irrelevant and prejudicial. Adelson asked Judge Katz to throw out the first-degree charge, arguing the prosecution had not proved premeditation. His attorney attempted to reframe the crime as one of passion, based on Sweeney's testimony that Dominique had deceived him. Although her family disputes this, Sweeney and Adelson claim that Dominique had previously agreed to rekindle the relationship, and that her refusal to do so was what provoked him the night of the incident. Some of the most damaging evidence against Sweeney was excluded from the trial at the urging of his defense attorney, including testimony from friends and peers that Dominique lived in fear of Sweeney. In the final days of the trial, a letter that Dominique had written to Sweeney, which he may or may not have received, was found at her home. It was read to the jury and almost seemed as if Dominique was speaking from beyond the grave. The letter read in part, quote, "Why must you be a part of everything I do? Why must you know the name of every person I come into contact with? Your paranoia is overboard. You do not love me. You are not obsessed with me. The whole thing has made me realize how scared I am of you. And I don't mean just physically. I'm afraid of the next time you're going to have another mood swing. When we are good, we are great. But when we are bad, we are horrendous. The bad outweighs the good." Judge Katz delivered another devastating blow to the prosecution. He agreed with a request from Adelson that the jury be allowed to consider only charges of manslaughter and second-degree murder, thus acquitting Sweeney of the first-degree charge. Judge Katz emphasized that Sweeney had arrived at Dominique's house without a weapon, although he knew Sweeney's hands had nearly taken the lives of Lillian during their relationship, and the life of Dominique 5 weeks before her ultimate demise. He also cited the fact that Sweeney had made no attempt to escape. According to a 1983 article from the newspaper The Bulletin, the jury handed down a sentence of voluntary manslaughter for Dominique's passing. He was also charged with assault for the previous time Sweeney put his hands on Dominique. The maximum amount of jail time required for the sentence was 6.5 years, with a chance of parole. Since the time spent in jail between the arrest and the sentencing counted as time served, Sweeney was free by July 1986. After serving 3 years, jurors later stated that their rulings would have been much more severe had the testimony from Lillian Pierce been included. Reaction from the Dunne's family and friends, as well as Hollywood in general, was an outpouring of shock and grief. Members of Victims for Victims marched outside the courtroom to protest the verdict. The group was founded by Teresa Saldana, an actress who nearly lost her life at the hands of a man with a knife. Dominique's father, Dominic, aired out his feelings over the trial, and Judge Katz.
It was something that just changed the lives of all of us in my family. There was something creepy about this guy. No, we didn't know that he was abusive, you see, until it was too late.
He said, "Our family was never favored with Judge Katz's charms, not even to the point of simple courtesies. For 7 weeks, he mispronounced Dominique's name, insistently calling her by my name, Dominic." In the weeks that followed, a local television station released the results of a poll of prosecutors and criminal defense lawyers, in which Judge Katz tied for 4th worst judge in Los Angeles County. In a stunning turn of events, Judge Katz would go on to express outrage over the verdict. He would go on to say, "This man held on to this young, vulnerable, beautiful, warm human being that had everything to live for with his hands." Paul Spiegel, the jury foreman, said during a TV interview that the judge's criticism of the verdict was a cheap shot. He said the judge was concerned over the criticism he himself had received since the trial and was trying to place the blame elsewhere. Spiegel said he felt that justice had not been served. He said the jury would have certainly found Sweeney guilty if they had heard all the evidence. Dominique's mother, Ellen, later founded Justice for Homicide Victims, a victims' rights organization. Her work on behalf of victims' rights was honored by President George H.W. Bush at the White House in 1989. Dominique focused on his work as a novelist and wrote an article on his experience during trial for Vanity Fair magazine. The article put a spotlight on the judicial system's issues in regards to victims' rights. He would also establish a career in crime reporting, including covering the O.J. Simpson trial, Menendez brothers trial, and hosting the show Dominique Dunne's Power, Privilege, and Justice. After Sweeney's release from prison, he continued his career as a chef at a trendy restaurant in Santa Monica, California called The Chronicle. At one point, members of Ellen Dunne's organization Justice for Homicide Victims handed out papers to restaurant goers at The Chronicle which read, "The hands that prepare your food today, we'd like you to know, strangled Dominique Dunne." according to the organization's co-founder, Marcella Leach. A boycott followed and Sweeney was fired. His parole ended in 1989. He eventually left the LA area and changed his name to John Mora. Ellen continued her work for the group until she retired in 1990 as her multiple sclerosis worsened. She passed away in January 1997. Dominic would eventually hire a private investigator to follow Sweeney for a number of years after the trial, which he admitted on the show Larry King Live. Afterwards, he gave up the hunt, no longer wanting to spend his years monitoring Sweeney. Dominic passed away in 2009 of cancer at the age of 83. Dominique Dunne was a beloved, good-natured young actress whose talent will never be forgotten. Her beautiful young spirit will continue to live on in the hearts of her family, friends, and countless fans worldwide. If you or someone you know is being impacted by DV, call the National DV Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE or visit thehotline.org. Okay, so thank you guys so much for watching this video. I've been True Crime Queen, and I just want to give a big shout out and a thank you to everybody who's ever liked, commented, shared, and subscribed all of my videos. The channel has grown so much in the year and a half that I've been on YouTube. So I just want to thank you guys, and the next video is on the way.